Hi, good afternoon, everyone. You are very welcome to today's webinar on sustainability reporting for SMEs. My name is Kathleen O'Regan and I work in the Sustainability Solutions Department of Enterprise Ireland. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded and we will share the recording afterwards. We'll have time at the end for Q&A, so if you have any questions during the webinar, please pop them into the chat and we'll hopefully be able to answer them at the end. So we're delighted to host today's webinar, Sustainability Reporting for SMEs, in collaboration with Caroline Gagan from CG Business Consulting. CG Business Consulting is an advisory firm helping organisations develop, articulate and execute their ESG and sustainability strategies. I am joined today by Caroline, who is CEO and founder of CG Business Consulting. Caroline is a seasoned professional with over 20 years of experience in ISO and sustainability management systems, corporate social responsibility, and environment management. As a passionate advocate for sustainable business practices, Caroline has dedicated her career to helping organisations integrate environmental, social, and governance principles into their core strategies to drive positive impacts on society and the environment. Caroline actually joined us last year on our webinar, Sustainability Standards, How to Get Ahead of Legislative, Regulatory and Social Change. Today's webinar is focused on a new standard, the Voluntary SME Sustainability Reporting Standard. Many elements are influencing corporate sustainability goals for businesses, including accelerated climate change, geopolitical events, sustainable procurement and supply chains, not to mention changing regulations. Earlier this year, the European Commission announced the Omnibus package of proposals aimed at reducing the burden of sustainability reporting requirements on SMEs and large companies employing greater than 250 employees and less than 1,000 employees. A new voluntary standard, the Voluntary Sustainability Reporting Standard for listed SMEs, also known as the VSME, has been developed by the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group to support microenterprises and SMEs improve their sustainability performance and to provide the sustainability information required by their customers and relevant stakeholders. So just as an example, lenders and investors. Today's webinar will provide insights on this new VSME standard and how to prepare a sustainability report, what to include in that report. So for example, details of your sustainability practices, actions that you have taken place, your policies and future plans. So I'd now like to hand over to Caroline. Thank you, Caroline, and I'll come back in at the end.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Kathleen. I'd like to begin by expressing my sincere thanks to you and the team at Enterprise Ireland for inviting us to contribute to your invaluable Sustainability Enterprise webinar series. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Caroline Gagan and I'm the CEO of CG Business Consulting, one of Ireland's leading advisory firms specialising in sustainability and ISO management systems. Next month, we're proud to celebrate 16 years in business, and over the last 16 years, we've supported more than 1,500 clients across Ireland, the UK, Spain, and the United States, helping them achieve and operationalise their sustainability objectives and secure certification to a range of ISO standards that underpin their ESG initiatives. Our sustainability team consists of 20 ESG and ISO experts, and they work closely with clients to operationalise sustainability, from conducting carbon footprints, life cycle analysis, EPDs, to developing net zero pathways, and also helping them develop their sustainability strategy and report in line with their ESG requirements, whether that's CSRD or the new VSME. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and in today's session I'm going to be introducing the voluntary reporting standard for non-listed SMEs and sharing practical insights on how to draft a sustainability report in line with the new standard. I'm going to be providing an overview of the ESG regulatory landscape and showing just how significant this VSME standard is now in light of the recent Omnibus proposal and change. and I'm going to be showing you how to prepare a VSME report. We're just going to focus on the basic module today due to the time limitations. And I also wanted to share the new free VSME digital template that's also been published last week by EFRAG. And then we've also developed our own VSME report. So I won't get to go through that with you today, but what I've done is I put in a QR code at the end of the presentation, and Kathleen will be sharing the slides and a copy of the links and any kind of information that you need to support the implementation of this VSME standard. So I want to start off by actually introducing what VSME is. So the VSME, the acronym is Voluntary Sustainability Reporting Standard for Non-Listed SMEs. This new framework was introduced by EFRAG, and another acronym, I apologize, but EFRAG stands for European Financial Reporting Advisory Group. They published the VSME in December 2024, and EFRAG is a technical body that's responsible for drafting the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, or ESRSs, which underpins the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And they were also tasked with the development of the VSME and providing a tailored, simplified reporting framework for smaller businesses. The VSME was specifically created to help micro, small and medium-sized enterprises report on their sustainability efforts in a way that's practical, it's proportionate, and it's aligned with the European standards without being overwhelming for SMEs. While it covers similar topics related to the ESRSs for large CSRD reporting companies, the VSME takes into account the limited resources, time and reporting capacity of smaller businesses. So the primary objective of the VSME standard is to provide a simplified, voluntary framework for non-listed SMEs to report on their sustainability performance. The whole framework aims to help SMEs satisfy data requests from your business partners, from financial institutions, and also to improve access to finance and help you contribute to a more sustainable and inclusive economy. In essence, the VSME aims to streamline ESG reporting for SMEs, making it easier for you to demonstrate your commitment to sustainability. It's really important that you understand that VSME is currently voluntary and falls outside of the scope of CSRD. It's not going to be issued as a delegated act yet, but maybe in the future. But it really responds to the real market demand that SMEs are facing when clients and banks and investors are asking for their ESG data, even when you're not legally obligated to do it. These requests are often fragmented, inconsistent, and burdensome. So the VSME is going to provide one unified solution to help you solve this problem of 10 different ESG data requests from 10 different formats. So it's a valuable framework for you to apply to ensure that you comply with all stakeholder requirements from an ESG data perspective. We have a lot of our clients that find that having a report and now having a standardized VSME framework to follow will help them reduce the reporting chaos, enhance access to finance, also to help them improve efficiency, to streamline data collection and reporting processes, and to build trust. So as Kathleen alluded to, the omnibus proposal, which was announced in February, is bringing several changes to the ESG reporting landscape. It's a major shift because there's a huge scope change. There initially was 50,000 companies that had to report and produce a sustainability report. Now over 40,000 companies, or 80% of EU large companies, are being taken out of reporting requirements. The reporting requirements now would only apply to large undertakings with more than 1,000 employees, or either a turnover of above 50 million or a 25 million balance sheet value. This means that the number of companies now out of scope will be closely aligned with the key scope thresholds of the 3SDDD. And the key thing for you to note is that the European Commission proposes the VSME standard now as the preferred framework for companies that are no longer required to report under CSRD. Another takeaway today is for you to understand the value chain cap. This is a key change, and this is under the Omnibus Directive 2. This is where large companies that are subject to CSRD are no longer allowed to request ESG information from companies in their supply chain with fewer than 1,000 employees beyond what's specified in the VSME standard. So I think this is really, really important that you understand that there's a protective measure in place now, or a shield, that will protect you against excessive ESG data requests. So organizations that can no longer, a bank, financial institution, or a large organization can only request you for ESG data based on the content of the VSME report. Now, there is an exception. The value chain cap provides protection for CSME, but for certain types of information remain exempt. And this is where it's for sector standard information and also for commercially necessary information, such as safety certs, product specs, and compliance documentation, and other sector specific metrics. But the key takeaway is the EU Commission, through the Omnibus, is promoting the VSME as the go-to standard for organizations between that employ 1 to 999 employees. And there's a value chain cap now in place, which will become industry norm. It's only recently been rolled out, but you should see now the future landscape is that the VSME reports will be requested. So there's a huge decision point now for businesses. Organizations have 3 options. You can stay with the CSRD and expect the new simplified standards expected before the end of the year, or you can transition to the VSME. I'm going to go through the different modules that are available in VSME. There's a basic one and there's a comprehensive one. My recommendation is that for any of our micro clients, we use the basic module, but then for any of our larger, small or medium-sized enterprises that we work with, we always recommend doing the basic module plus the comprehensive module to ensure that you've a robust VSME report in place and to capture all of the work that you've probably done already in the rollout of CSRD. And then the third and the least favourable option would be to scale back on reporting, but that is not a recommended action because we've seen the business response trends. We're seeing that most companies now are not stepping away from reporting. They're recognising that sustainability transparency brings business advantages, especially in competitive European or global markets. And companies just above or below the CSRD threshold want to stay credible, responsible and future ready. And for those who've struggled with CSRD, scale or complexity, the VSME offers a right-sized alternative, and it's a perfect solution for micro businesses just starting out on your sustainability reporting journey or reporting for the first time, whereas the VSME basic and comprehensive modules allowed you to have a more higher maturity ESG report with that more complexity reporting requirements. So the real benefits of the VSME adoption is enhanced credibility. It gives you an opportunity to streamline, to communicate your sustainability endeavours, and it allows you to prepare for evolving regulatory requirements and market expectation. And critically then, it really lets you understand your sustainability risks and opportunities and impacts as a business. So who should use VSME? The VSME standard is designed for any business that wants to track and report on their ESG performance, whether you're legally required to do so or not. While originally developed for SMEs, the framework is now applicable and recommended to over 40,000 companies in the European Union that seek a practical, proportional and voluntary approach to ESG reporting. You really should consider using the VSME standard if you want to align with the European ESG standards without unnecessary complexity. If you're part of a supply chain of a CSRD client, you would be very much encouraged to ensure that you use VSME to enable you to report on your ESG metrics. If you are looking for funding or access to funding, bankings and financial institution investors are also looking for you to share with your ESG data. And then tender participants expect to see procurement requirements specifying VSME in the near future. Nothing has been set yet, but that would be an expectation in the market that the VSME will be requested as part of tenders in the future. The VSME standard. So the VSME standard is a free standard that's available on EFRAG. I've included the link to it here in this presentation, so you can simply click the link afterwards to access your free copy. There's also educational videos that EFRAG have published on the VSME standard. There's 2 series of educational videos on all of the contents of the standard. There's also a guidance document within the actual standard as well, that gives the kind of reference material, text, and descriptions of what you need to do in terms of reporting in line with the metrics and the data sets. On the 27th of May, as part of the VSME ecosystem deliverables, EFRAG released the first version of a digital template. And again, I've put in the links here, and they provided a mock-up example of a pre-filled VSME digital template version for you to actually reference if you are implementing this VSME standard. So there is the standard available on the EFRAG website. If you go into projects and go into VSME or search VSME, it will populate. You get a copy of the standards plus a link to all the videos. And then if you search VSME digital template, you're going to see the reference to the mock-up example of the template, then plus the blank version. So the digital template is in Excel and it's free. There's interactive elements. There's direct links to the VSME text and guidance, and there's also auto calculations and consistency checks. And it's also being supported with the publication of the XBRL taxonomy template, which this enables seamless software and vendor independent digital reporting and data exchange. And all materials are accompanied with explanatory notes, which I would encourage you to read prior for any implementation. So they're the kind of free tools and supports that are available from EFRAG, and they're all available with the links on this presentation. I'm going to take you today through actually the structure of the VSME standard. The VSME standard has 2 modules that a company can use to prepare your sustainability report. There's the basic module, and then there's the comprehensive module. Our recommendation is that small to medium-sized businesses adopt the basic plus the comprehensive. And it's really important that you understand that the basic module is a prerequisite for applying the comprehensive module. And again, this structure allows businesses to start with essential reporting and expand as needed as your ESG practices and maturity increases over the coming years. So the basic module overview. There's 4 key category areas. There's general information from B1 to B2, and then there's environmental metrics, which covers energy, emissions, pollution, biodiversity, water, and waste data. And then you have to report and disclose your social metrics from workforce characteristics, health and safety, and remuneration. And then finally, the 4th sector is around governance metrics. So you are required to report on your environmental, social, and business conduct issues using B1 to B11 disclosures. And if you want to provide more comprehensive information, you can integrate the metrics required from B1 to B11 with disclosures selecting from the comprehensive module. And additional guidance is in the VSME standard from B1 to B11, and it's available in paragraphs 66 to 209 in the VSME standard. The very first section is B1, basis for preparation. Here is where you're going to be required to disclose. You have to specify whether you've gone with option A, which is basic module only, or option B, where you have selected the basic module plus the comprehensive module. If you are omitting any disclosures, you have to clarify in the report whether you have deemed some disclosures sensitive or classified. And you also have to specify whether your report is prepared on an individual or a consolidated basis. In the case of a consolidated sustainability report, you have to list all of the subsidiaries, including their registered address, covered in the report. Company information, which is the 3rd part of B1. This basically is where you have to specify your legal form, your NACE sector code, the size of your balance sheet in Europe, and your turnover in euro. The number of employees in your headcount, full-time equivalents, and then your country of primary operations and location of significant assets, and the geolocation of your sites owned, leased, or managed. And if you have obtained any sustainability related certifications like ISO 14001, 15001, 14064 verification, or any EPDs or EcoVadis or CDP ratings or anything like that, this is your opportunity to specify what certifications you have in place in your organization. And once all that information is completed, you can then proceed to B2. So if you have put in place specific practices, policies, or future initiatives that you are planning on implementing for transitioning towards a more sustainable business model or economy, you have to basically state what your practices are in this context. So for example, how you plan to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions, or how you plan to prevent pollution, or various different initiatives to improve product safety, as well as current initiatives to improve working conditions and equal treatment in your workplace. It's also an opportunity for you to specify all of the various sustainability training programs that you have implemented in terms of your workforce or supply chain related to sustainability projects. Formal policies. This is an opportunity for you to document your sustainability policies and whether they're publicly available or not. In the standard, you have to basically specify yes or no on whether they're publicly available. So do you have existing sustainability practices, policies, future initiatives that address any of the following sustainability issues? And again, it's really important to note that there's a menu of sustainability issues available in the EFRAG VSME standard, but I've just extracted some of them here. So you'd be encouraged to have a climate change policy, a pollution policy, a water and marine resources, biodiversity, circular economy, your policies in relation to your own workforce and workers in your value chain, affected communities and consumers and end users. Now, if you do not have any policies in place, the VSME allows you to specify that you will in the future have them and put in a date and a target for the implementation of these policies, and equally allow you to put a target. So the practices and policies and the future initiatives are key in terms of how you're going to address sustainability initiatives, and for you to specify what your forward-looking plans are and how you're going to implement these sustainability issues. Under B3 is where we start the environmental metrics. So B3 is the energy and greenhouse gas emissions. Under section B3 in energy and greenhouse gas emissions in the VSME requires you to report on your energy consumption. So you need to report on your annual energy consumption from your electricity use, gas use, any fuel consumed in terms of diesel or petrol, and you'll also have to specify the renewable sources of your energy consumption. You will be required to disclose your estimated greenhouse gas emissions, gross emissions in tons of CO2 or equivalent, considering the content of the greenhouse gas protocol standard. For the purposes of today, the greenhouse gas protocol, it's a global standard for measuring, reporting and managing your greenhouse gas emissions, and it covers scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions. So in the VSME basic module, you only have to report on your scope 1 and your scope 2 emissions. In the comprehensive module, you have to report on your scope 1, your scope 2 and your scope 3 emissions. And there's also guidance available in the VSME standard to enable you to understand the conversion factors and also to understand the sources of your emissions. So the energy and greenhouse gas emissions will be scope 1 and scope 2, and for the comprehensive module, it's going to be scope 1 to scope 3. B4 to B5, so this is pollution and biodiversity. B4 is specifically for pollution of air, water and soil. Here you have to disclose the pollutants emitted to air, water and soil in your operations with the amounts of each for each pollutant. And if you're already reporting to authorities like the EPA, you can reference any existing or link in any reports or URL links to the documents where it is reported. Under biodiversity, you have to report the number and area of sites in or near your location and disclose land use metrics, which is a total land use, sealed area and nature-orientated areas, both on-site and off-site. Under B6 and B7 specifically, here you have to disclose your total water withdrawal, which is the amount of water drawn into the boundaries of your organisation or facilities. And in addition to this, you are required to separately present the amount of water withdrawn at sites located in high areas of water stress. If your company has production processes in place which significantly consume water, like thermal energy processes like drying or power production or production of goods, you are required to disclose your water consumption calculated as the difference between your withdrawal and your discharge from your production processes. In terms of resource management, circular economy and waste management, you need to disclose whether you apply circular economy principles, and if so, how you apply these principles. You're also going to have to disclose the amount of generation of waste broken down into non-hazardous and hazardous, and then the total annual waste diverted to recycling and reuse. And if you are in an operation where there is a sector using significant material flows from manufacturing, construction, packaging, or others, the annual mass flow of relevant materials used will have to be disclosed. In terms of workforce, B8, so this is under the social element of disclosures. You have to disclose the number of employees in headcount or full-time equivalent for the type of employment contract, gender, country of employment contract, and if you are operating in more than one country, you have to specify this. If you employ more than 50 or more employees, you have to disclose the employee turnover rate for that reporting period. Under, again, the social metrics B9 to B11, workforce health, safety and development, you are required to disclose the following information regarding your employees. You will have to disclose the number and rate of recordable work-related accidents, the number of fatalities as a result of work-related injuries and work-related ill health. And then in terms of remuneration, bargaining and training, you have to basically specify the minimum wage for the country and the percentage of gap in pay between female and male employees. And you may omit this disclosure when your headcount is below 150 employees. But I want you to note that there is a threshold change to 100 employees going to be effective in a couple of years. So if you have less than 150 employees, you do not have to specify the percentage gap in pay. And then the percentage of employees covered by collective bargaining agreements and the average number of annual training hours per employee broken down by gender. And then the final metric in terms of VSME is the disclosure requirement. You have to disclose in terms of number of convictions and the total amount of fines incurred for the violation of anti-corruption and anti-bribery laws. But before I go on to the comprehensive module, I think it's just really important that you understand that all of those metrics are in the free VSME template, okay? It's only a free template. It's practical, but I think it'll really give you the kind of checklist of all the requirements broken down in terms of what I've summarized there from B1 to B11. Now, if you want to do the comprehensive module, you have to do the basic one, which I've gone through there, B1 to B11, just very quickly and very high level. But what you have to do for the comprehensive module, and these are for businesses that have to report in more detail, often like to investors or to banks, or if your clients ask for deeper ESG information, you will have to provide additional disclosure requirements focusing on your business model, your sustainability strategy, how you've implemented sustainability practices and integrated into your business model, what your climate targets and transition plans are in terms of net zero, and in terms of what your wider climate targets are, and then enhanced social and human rights policies. So the comprehensive module has 100 data points compared to 1,100 in CSRD, and there's 9 additional disclosures building on the 9 basic models. It's important to understand that the VSME incorporates many elements of the CSRD, and if you have already completed a double materiality assessment under the ESRSs or have gathered data for the various different ESRS data points under CSRD, you can apply that and put this into the VSME comprehensive module. Don't waste what you've already done. So the comprehensive module, as I said now a couple of times, is really, really important for SMEs to use. The micro businesses and anyone starting out on their sustainability journey, just report on your basic module. But for larger organizations, please my recommendation would be to use the basic plus the comprehensive module. It's best for companies that want to provide a detailed, investor-ready ESG report, particularly those sourcing finance and or a stronger sustainability profile for your corporate clients. The comprehensive module has strategy and business model disclosures, and this is where you'll have to specify your key offerings and their sustainability impacts, providing an overview of your products and your services, the markets that you operate and the significance of those, and then your business relationships and supply chain connections. And you will also have an opportunity to publish your ESG strategy in terms of the inclusion requirements of the comprehensive module. The environmental strategy and climate transition, you have to do your scope 1 and scope 2 and scope 3 reporting. You need to have climate adaptation actions for identified climate risks. You need to have time horizons for climate related risks in terms of short, medium and long term. And if you have a significant environmental footprint or carbon footprint, you have to basically expand reporting on your air, water and soil emissions, and then provide more granular water consumption and wastewater discharge data points. The social and human rights disclosures are greater in the comprehensive model. For any companies with more than 50 employees, you have to specify the female to male ratio in management. You have to provide a breakdown of self-employed workers and temporary contract workers. And then from human rights and labour practices, there's various different code of conducts and policies required in terms of child labour, forced labour, human trafficking, discrimination and workplace safety. There's also complaints handling mechanisms required for human rights violations and reporting on confirmed incidents of labour rights violations on your own workforce and value chain. There's also, from a governance and financial transparency, if you are operating in a specific sector, such as fossil fuels, weapons, or tobacco, there is going to be revenue disclosure requirements there from those sectors. In terms of corporate governance, gender diversity in government instructions and decision-making bodies is also required to be noted. And you'll also have to specify how you've integrated your sustainability considerations and how you've actually applied that from a financial planning perspective and understanding what your financial risks are based on your climate risk assessments. So a lot more in the comprehensive module. I've only just lightly dusted on it today, but I think getting started, you could look at applying the VSME. So my recommendation and tips for the VSME is you really need to understand who you're reporting to and what your stakeholders expect. Reach out to your clients, ask them what is your expectation. You're probably getting a lot of various different ESG data requests, but just reach out to your internal and external stakeholders to really understand what they require from you. Choose your module, decide basic or comprehensive. Focus on data collection. If you already have various different ISO health and safety management systems, environmental management systems, a lot of the data will be already there. So set up a sustainability committee, utilize a lot of different departments from finance who can get you information in terms of electricity bills, gas bills, travel, any scope 1 or scope 2 greenhouse gas emissions data. Work with your environmental health and safety teams to get all of your environmental metrics, and then work with HR in terms of the government and the social metrics. You need to understand the VSME standard. As I said, there's videos, there's free guidance, there's now a digital tool to really understand the requirements by the VSME standard. Then you need to develop an ESG strategy. You need to kind of understand what your environmental, social and government impacts are. Prepare your report in line with the VSME, and then constantly update that report because you'll have to show comparatives, and then measure your greenhouse gas emissions. The whole EU Green Deal is all about becoming a climate neutral bloc by 2050. And in order to become carbon neutral or climate neutral, you need to understand what your greenhouse gas emissions are. So every organization should be really focusing on doing your greenhouse gas inventory and understanding what your scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 upstream, downstream emissions are. So that's a must. Carbon accounting is a must. Understanding greenhouse gas emissions is a must. So access the VSME standard, use the financial and operational data you already have, and then seek expert guidance. Then there is lots of green grants and supports available. Enterprise Ireland are fantastic. They've got the Climate Action Voucher, they've got the Green Start, they've got a Green Plus to really help you on your sustainability journey and to really understand how to improve your ESG performance. SEI have some grants in terms of energy efficiency to help you on your net zero pathways. And then there's also Green for Micros available through all the local enterprise offices. And then here is the download for our CGBC VSME report if you want a sample one. And that's it. And I'd like to thank everyone for their attention today.
Thanks very much, Caroline. Look, that was great and really, really insightful. A lot of tips there and advice for companies in terms of sustainability of reporting. And it's I think the VSME standards is a great framework now for SMEs to use. I suppose the issue before was there were so many different frameworks, and the hope would be that your customers, your stakeholders, banks and investors will align with this VSME standard and the information that they're looking for from you and from your organization. I'd concur, I suppose, Caroline, with your advice that the majority of people probably attending this webinar today will be requested information, I suppose, from their customers. So really, it's focusing in on the basic and the comprehensive module. The basic module is more for micro companies, but both combined is a really good place to start for companies to actually report on the ESG, and a report then obviously will be updated annually, and it will make it easier for you in providing the information then as requests come in. Is a really good starting point. So if anyone has any questions, please pop them into the chat. We just have one in at the moment, and that's just in relation to the policies there, whether policies should be combined or whether there should be individual policies under the various different kind of headings. I suppose it depends on your company sector and size. There's flexibility here. This is voluntary. So I think for some companies, it might make sense to combine some of the different subject matter topics under one policy. And I just wanted to highlight as well, and we did have a webinar on ESG policies there about 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago now actually, with the Irish Capital Investors Association, and they developed ESG policy templates, 9 ESG policy templates in line with the Invest Europe reporting template, which is used by investors. And they developed templates with their members, and they're available to download from the IVCA website. So we'll share that link again just in a follow-up email, but that's just to keep that in mind in terms of the policies, that there's templates there that you could use and make them bespoke, obviously, for your own organisation. So I don't see any more questions coming in. Just give it a minute. So it is a voluntary standard. It's not mandatory, but I suppose the advice is the more that you do, the better position you're putting your company in terms of meeting the requests, obviously, by your customers and stakeholders, but also in terms of improving your company's sustainability performance. So I suppose that's what the real goal is under environmental, social, and governance. So what I might do is, and questions might come in, a few more are coming in, I think there now. Let's have a look. What about companies who are remote but Ireland headquartered? Same framework, but you don't need to complete all sections.
Yes, so the VSME standards allows you to say not applicable. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so within the VSME standard, it's based on the kind of modular approach. So you have the basic and the comprehensive, and it's a European standard. So those it's based on proportionality. So a lot of the disclosures, there's some that are mandatory under the voluntary standard, and some that are optional. But the advice would be, the more, I suppose, that you report on, the better position you're putting your company in, and the better understanding that you're getting of your data. So just for example, if it was your carbon carbon emissions and you're looking at scope 1 and 2, to also look at scope 3, because that's where, even though that might be optional, that's where most of your impacts probably are in your scope 3. So the more you do, the better, but just keeping in mind that the standard is written very much for proportionality in mind, that we have companies of different sizes, different sectors, and different jurisdictions, and with different, obviously levels of support. And I'll touch on supports at the moment, and Caroline has touched on the supports that EFRAG have developed in terms of the digital reporting template and the videos and the guides. The grant support and getting an expert in can also be used, I suppose, to help companies as well develop their sustainability report. So if you go with the basic module, how will that impact you in terms of tendering?
Yeah, good question. So again, the basic module has the most basic ESG metrics. But if you're in a tender and the tender asks you for your scope 3 emissions, you won't have the information available. So it really depends on the tender requirements. Now, truthfully, we have seen some tender requirements where we've specified for our clients in the tender competition has been asked to produce their scope 1 and scope 2 and a plan for their scope 3. So it really depends to that lady. If you go with the basic module, in a tender, if they ask you, have you got a VSME report, you can tick yes and produce the report. But I don't know whether it's going to get that sophisticated if they're going to start asking for all of the metrics in comprehensive and basic. But I think the comprehensive is specifically, so just so you know, EFRAG did a huge consultation around the content of this VSME, okay? They engaged with 25,000 SMEs, 750 banks, and they looked at 12 key industry questionnaires, ESG questionnaires. And based on all of that inputs, they developed the key metrics, okay? And that's why they put in the value chain cap. And that's why I really wanted to strongly share that there can be pushback from us as SMEs to say, this is the VSME standard. This has been promoted by the EU Commission as the gold standard or the go-to standard for my business to report on. We have chosen to do the basic module, but as you get more sophisticated, you can add the comprehensive module. So I think that if a tender now requires you to produce a VSME report, it should specify the basic module or the comprehensive. But to be truthful, I think the comprehensive module is mainly for financial institutions and investors. And then for large CSRD clients in construction, manufacturing, if you're part of that supply chain, I would be strongly encouraging you to do your net zero pathway, or if you're in pharma, make sure you have your scope 1, 2, and 3 inventory done, follow ISO 14064, do your greenhouse gas protocol, and get a net zero pathway. We are seeing a huge increase in our services in those specific areas because they're coming from supply chain demands.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll just add to that, I suppose the VSME standard is very much a reporting standard for your organization, but depending on your company and perhaps your product or your service. So for example, if you're in the construction sector, you might actually be asked for an environmental product declaration of your product. So just to keep in mind, this standard is about reporting in terms of your organization, in terms of its, kind of impacts in terms of carbon footprinting. But you may be required for more information, and this might be something you're asked for already. We see a lot in the construction sector, but also other sectors as well. We see a lot of, companies, for example, supplying a service or a product into the NHS, and they're being asked for a carbon reduction roadmap. Other companies, food companies, are being asked to provide the carbon footprint of whatever product that they're selling into retailers. So just to keep that in mind as well, your organization and then your product or service. But this is just, I suppose, as a framework, it's a useful framework to report on the ESG. And it might be, if you have this information all collated, if your customer is asking you about your carbon footprint, that you have it easy to hand, that you can pull from it. It mightn't be a case of sharing the VSME report, but it might be a case of that you have the data and information easy to hand to share as your customers, maybe your stakeholders, look for that information. The following question now, the next question is just on: do we have to measure water if we're a medium-sized company, even if we do not use much water? So I suppose under the various different headings under the VSME standard, water, it's if applicable. So that's when, you know, we kind of mentioned that proportionality. It's really about focusing on the areas of impact from your company. So all companies will use energy. So all companies should report, as Caroline outlined, on their their carbon footprint and be able to show a carbon reduction roadmap. But not all companies will use water, or will use very relatively small amount of water. So it's kind of as relevant. So we're focusing today, I suppose, on the sustainability report. But the first, I suppose in decide the first kind of decision point is what do you report on? And that's prioritizing the areas for your company. So that's kind of stage one. And we had a webinar on that, but something that we might look at again. It's about prioritizing the areas relevant to your company, whether you're a services company, a food company, a construction company, or an engineering company. So that would be a no. So the next question is: how do you see AI impacting the reporting requirements? Do you want to jump in there, Caroline?
Yeah, sure. So with AI, at the moment, I suppose it's all basically whether your data collection systems that you have in place. Okay, so maybe you can use AI to help with your policies. But fundamentally, if you've got an AI agent or some sort of AI functionality for gathering the data. So AI will support you getting the data that's available, but a lot of the disclosures are just numbers, but then there is a range on your policies and your practices. That's how I see AI, but I think the Excel template is primarily used at the moment. So the Excel template, it's not to provide a commercial. They're not trying to compete with sustainability consultants or anyone that has the VSME software solution available. But I don't see any impact with AI. That's just my opinion yet.
Yeah, no, look, it'll be interesting to see, I suppose, how this evolves. And just the follow-up question actually was in relation to that Excel template. Is the intention that the Excel template used will form the basis of a report, or is the report the Excel itself? Is there a template report available? But Caroline, thankfully, you're sharing an example VSME report, which is one that you've done for yourselves as a VSME. Just to, I suppose, a word of warning about the Excel template that is available on the VSME standard, and they say this in their guidelines. It is just it's suitable for using for the first time, because as we know, this will obviously have to be updated every year. So it hasn't been developed so that you can compare with kind of the previous year. And EFRAG do expect other the market or software platforms to develop, to help companies, and they have developed. They are available as we speak to help companies develop a report. But obviously, they're paid for, whereas this is free. So this really is a starting point, and it's a once-off, because you can't actually compare data.
And just to follow on from that, Kathleen, as well, I think this template's only available for the next 6 months. Okay, so I think it's
Year
just
one, yeah.
All of the feedback provided by all of the stakeholders was: we need support, we need guidance, we need this to be as cost effective as possible. You need to provide us with the supports available to really help us understand what we have to disclose, what that means, and how we do it. And that's why I suppose they've tried to make it as simple. But look, we've done our own VSME report. There's not one out there yet in the industry. This is, we practice what we preach. So we're going to be publishing that. The QR code is that, you can see it, but template's fine. It's a really good starting point, but you can develop your own, maybe as that previous guy said, you can develop an AI agent and put it all in and feed the data, who knows. But the Excel file is only temporarily available, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of software companies providing ones.
Exactly. So just the following question then is, for SMEs who are creating both basic and comprehensive modules, do these have to be two separate reports, or would the comprehensive by nature include the basic? So I think, yeah, the latter, the comprehensive by nature would include the basic. So it's the comprehensive is just the additional data points that you outlined along with the basic.
Yes.
And then GRI is similar. Will this supersede the GRI approach? Well, I suppose the GRI approach would be more comprehensive, kind of would be my understanding. So this is kind of a really more simplified approach compared to the say the GRI standards, but they would be at another level again.
Yeah, and just so you know, when if you actually go into the omnibus documents, the legal requirements, VSME is specifically called out 5 times in that. GRI is not. Okay, so I think the EU Commission has taken the stand now that VSME is the go-to framework for reporting.
Yeah. So
in the
just
EU, in the EU,
yes,
in the EU.
Just to have a comment, we saw the EU roll back on the CSRD requirements for SMEs. I suppose, yeah, it was kind of more for large companies employing between the 250 and the 1,000 employees, and then the listed companies. So and are now pivoting to the VSME standards. Do you foresee further modifications, adaptations to the VSME, or is it fully locked in with clear reporting, submission timelines, etc.? So no. So I suppose this was approved and published in December 2024, and it was designed with SMEs in mind, employing less than 250. So the omnibus package was published in February, and I suppose the ESRS standards, as Caroline outlined, they are currently under review and will be, simplified, and drafts, I think, will be available in July and finalised then by the end of the year. So they will be seen as the gold standard, I suppose, in terms of reporting. The VSME standards is yet to be seen whether this will evolve, if it's to include those wave 2 companies employing between the 250 and 1,000. It's not designed for those companies yet, but it may evolve. So it is, while it has been approved by EFRAG, in June it's expected to be approved by a delegated act by the European Commission. So it's all kind of in play at the moment, but as it stands at the moment, it's the standard for SMEs and micro companies. Are there any indications that companies requesting data will accept a completed VSME report? It can be sent out without having to edit. Unfortunately, that's not something that I suppose we've come across yet. It's very early stages yet. I think maybe large corporates might even look at this VSME standard and hopefully use it, in terms of the questions that they're going to ask their supply chain for, that they'll base it on this. That is the hope, and that is the ambitions, I suppose, of the actual standard. But time will tell. We haven't seen it in any examples that have been shared with us, I suppose, what our client companies are being asked for. So I suppose, but it is still early days yet. How does the reporting allow for resources working from home and their sustainable impact? Well, maybe that applies to maybe carbon footprinting, and there's tools for calculating carbon footprinting for people working from home or whether they're within the company. So that can all be taken account for. That's kind of the new world that we're in with hybrid working. So that's all taken into account. The new VSME standard sounds very similar to the CIF carbon calculator data requirements. If an organisation in our supply chain wants our scope 3 data, are we bound legally to get this data prepared for them? So it's not a legal requirement, I suppose, but if you're, it's about winning a tender as well, and it's about providing the information for your customer, because we find now that customers are being asked for this information, or clients are being asked for information, and it's about providing that information. And as we know, for all companies, most of their impacts actually comes for the supply chain. So you're in your customer's scope 3. So they're looking for that data from you. And then in turn, when you're looking at your company's impacts, you need to look at your value chain upstream and downstream to reduce your impacts. So finally, then, I think the current VSME standard on their website was published in December 24, which was before the omnibus was announced. So is there an update due? So look, time will tell on that, and this has been kind of all the standards are, well, the ESRS standards are under review at the moment, and so yeah, we'll see whether the actual voluntary standard will be updated or not. So I don't think we've any more questions. I'm just conscious of time, so I might just share my slides here, just on the supports very briefly, just as a reminder. So just 2 seconds. So this is just a reminder, I suppose, of the supports that are available. So we have the Sustainability Kickstarter workshops, Sustainability Leaders Program, and the webinar series covering a range of topics. So our webinar next week is actually on the omnibus and what does this mean for businesses now. So this will be very relevant to the audience here today. It's relevant to SMEs, it's relevant to those large companies employing between 250 and 1,000 employees. So we'll have some insights shared from companies that are reporting already on CSRD. So they're the Wave 1 companies, greater than 1,000 employees. So that'll be our last webinar for this half of the year, and we do plan to run webinars later on in the year. If there's any topics of interest, just let us know. And it's something that we'll be reviewing shortly in terms of our topics for later on in the year. We've been running the Sustainability Kickstarter workshops and the leadership program since the end of 2023. We've had over 700 people take part in the Sustainability Kickstarter workshop, and we've had over 100 companies take part in the Sustainability Leaders Program. So the Sustainability Kickstarter workshop is a 3-hour workshop. It's online. It's free for SMEs. We have had large companies to attend as well. It's open to Enterprise Ireland, Uderos, and local enterprise office client companies. Ideally, it's aimed at kind of business leaders within the company, and it's to develop an initial action plan aligning to the Sustainable Development Goals. So we have one more coming up, which is actually this Friday. There's spaces available. So if this is of interest, you can go on to the Enterprise Ireland website, the Sustainability Supports page, and register for that. But we do hope to run more later on in the year. But as I said, we've one more, and that's actually just on this Friday coming. We also have the Sustainability Leaders Program. Now, the program at the moment is full, but we do plan to run more later on in the year. So this is 6 workshops over 12 weeks to develop a sustainability charter for the company, to identify the impacts, risks, and opportunities, and develop an action plan out of that. It's free again for SMEs to attend. Enterprise Ireland client companies, up to 2 people can attend, and it's actually encouraged that 2 people attend, perhaps from different roles. It could be from HR or operations or finance, and that they will the output of this Sustainability Leaders Program is a sustainability charter. But if there's 2 people working on it during the program, there'll be better insights from that, and it is to be shared with the company senior leadership team afterwards. So just following on then from the actual Kickstarter workshops and the webinars, we have a range of supports. So under our Climate Planning Fund for Business, we have the Climate Action Voucher, Green Start, Green Plus, Strategic Consultancy, as Caroline mentioned. So these are our training and advisory supports. A lot of companies are aligning to international standards, so whether that be ISO 50001, ISO 14001, the science-based targets, or disclosure platforms, EcoVadis, CDP, to B Corp. So because this is, I suppose, what companies want to show, and is to be aligned to international standards and to be able to show to their customers and relevant stakeholders. But also included in that is, how to develop a sustainability report and aligning up then to the VSME standard. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then we've a range of supports then under the Enterprise Emissions Reduction Investment Fund, from our capital supports to install meters, from our larger capital supports to decarbonise and to reduce environmental impacts, say under environmental aid. And then we have a range of RD&I supports, ranging from an innovation voucher up to our larger supports under our R&D fund to develop more sustainable products, processes, and services. So look, as always, for more information, go to our website on the Sustainability Supports page, contact your client advisor, or email myself or one of my colleagues on green@enterprise-ireland.com. So thanks for joining us today. Goodbye.